Imagine for a moment, you stand before a vast door, not made of wood or iron, but of belief. It hums with silent energy. This is not a door you open with force. It opens when you remember who you are. The moment you stop reaching outside for permission to prosper, the lock dissolves. As Charles F. Haanel once taught, you cannot bring health, prosperity, or peace to your life from the outside. They must unfold from within, where the divine already lives in fullness. So, before we journey inward, I invite you to like and subscribe, but only if it truly resonates with your soul. Now listen closely. There's something in you, beneath the surface, behind the stories, that already knows how to prosper. It's not a skill. It's not a secret. It's your design. But that design has been buried under noise, the noise of conditioning, fear, and forgetting. True prosperity is not hustle. It is not accumulation. It is not the shallow security of having enough. It is alignment. Prosperity is what happens when the inner life no longer contradicts the laws that govern the universe. When your thoughts, your words, your beliefs, and your expectancy all move in the same direction as one harmonious current, then supply must flow. It's not a reward. It's not a gamble. It's law. This is the prosperity Haanel revealed, the kind that begins in the unseen, the kind you don't chase but unfold. And the first unfolding? It happens when you stop thinking that abundance is out there, waiting for you to catch it. Prosperity is not a destination. It is your state of being when you are not resisting your own source. Pause now and consider this. What if nothing was actually missing from your life? Accept your awareness of what's already present. There's a quiet part of you that's tired of striving. Not because you lack ambition, but because you sense there must be another way, a higher law. You are right, there is, and you're standing at its entrance. The moment you stop fighting against your own nature, the door opens. And your nature is not lack. It is not confusion. It is not grinding effort. Your true nature is creative, composed, and connected. Just as a seed does not beg the soil to bloom, you were never meant to struggle your way into supply. You were meant to remember. The inner gate to abundance opens the moment you reclaim your identity as cause, not effect. Not a passive receiver, but a magnetic activator. This is your work, not outer manipulation, but inner mastery. And here's the principle. All outer abundance is the reflection of inner permission. Let that sink in. If something feels blocked outside, there is likely a belief within that has declared, not yet, or not for me, or I'm not ready. And because the law cannot violate your word, it waits. The law of mind is perfect. It does not judge you. It does not rush you. It mirrors your dominant pattern. That's all. But what it reflects back becomes your lived experience. And that's why this journey must begin inside. Because the world does not give you permission to prosper. You do. There is no distant gatekeeper, no universal delay. There is only consciousness and its current condition. And here's the great news. Consciousness can be shifted, chosen, aligned, reclaimed. You are not stuck, not ever. That's the lie. The truth? You've simply been standing at the gate, holding the key, waiting for someone else to open it. But no one else can. The vibration of your dominant thought opens or closes the door. The emotional tone of your self-talk becomes the password. The clarity of your vision becomes the compass that guides the flow of substance. So before we speak of money or health or success, pause. Breathe, return. Because everything you think you need to get begins in what you're willing to allow. And if the word allow feels soft, weak, passive, then you haven't yet tasted its power. Allowing is not laziness. It is alignment, the deepest, most courageous form of choice. To allow is to stop interrupting the current of your own becoming. To allow is to say, I trust the law enough to move with it, not against it. And this choice, this spiritual posture, doesn't need outer proof to begin. It begins when you say so, not someday, not when you've healed everything, not after another book or mentor or a course. Now, this moment, you are standing at the inner gate, and something in you knows you're ready. Let that readiness rise, not as emotion, but as knowing. You've been trying to earn what was always yours to express. And now, that part of you, the part that remembers truth, moves forward. You don't need to convince the universe to prosper you. You only need to stop contradicting it. So, ask this silently. What belief am I holding that prosperity must struggle to reach me? Let the answer come without judgment. Simply notice, because every answer points to a door, and once you name the door, you no longer have to wait for it to open. You step forward, and it swings wide. You are no longer a beggar in your own kingdom. You are the one who commands with consciousness, who shapes with thought, who calls forth by inner decree. Let this be the moment you stop treating prosperity as a prize and begin walking as its expression. What if everything in your life up to now was waiting for you to take responsibility, not in guilt, but in power? Responsibility is not burden, it is origin. You are not here to react endlessly to external conditions. You are here to author them. The story of your life does not unfold by chance. It unfolds by consciousness, set into motion by what you accept as real, as possible, and as true. The law of cause and effect is not just a principle. It is the unseen architecture of your world. Every experience, every delay, every breakthrough traces back to a seed thought. Some planted in fear, some in faith, but none random. You may have believed that life was happening to you, that conditions were fixed, people unpredictable, and blessings scarce. But let's slow that down. Really sit with it. Where did that idea come from? Perhaps it was inherited, absorbed, repeated often enough that it became reality. But reality is not what's outside. It's what you've decided is possible within. What you call reality is just a habit of thought made visible. Now imagine breaking that habit, not by force but by clarity. There was a moment, not long ago, when something didn't feel right. Maybe it was a job, a relationship, a pattern of lack that kept looping. And deep down, a question rose. What if I created this? Not to blame, not to suffer, but to reclaim authorship. That question is sacred. Because the moment you entertain it, the script changes. The world is not fixed. It is malleable. And your thought is the mold. This is not theory. It is the most practical truth you'll ever know. When you accept that you are cause, not merely effect, your energy shifts. You stop waiting for the outer to adjust and begin refining the inner. Quietly, intentionally. No longer asking, why is this happening to me? Instead, what idea did I energize that allowed this? And more importantly, what idea can I energize now to shift it? The law does not punish, it reflects. It is not watching you, it is following you. Obediently, silently, without bias. Every assumption you hold, it confirms. Every vibration you emit, it organizes around. This is the sacred neutrality of the universe. It does not argue, it creates. So where does that leave you? Exactly where you belong, in the seat of power. But not the power of domination, the power of causation. That subtle moment when you realize, I've been waiting for permission to change what I've always had authority over. You don't need to fight conditions, you shift consciousness. When a pattern reappears, it is not a curse, it is clarity. It is your previous self showing you what you once believed, and in that mirror you have a choice, reinforce or revise. There is nothing weak about changing your mind. To change your mind is to change the template from which your world is printed. But don't rush this. Don't try to flip every thought into its opposite. This is not mental warfare. It's deeper, quieter. It's the moment you stop asking life to prove you wrong and start inviting truth to prove you right. The truth? You are not stuck. The effect may be persistent, but cause is always available. And you can choose again. Pause here. Close your eyes if you can. let the idea take root. I am the origin of what unfolds, not the victim, not the chaser, the origin. That phrase alone can rewrite a decade of limitation. And no, this doesn't mean that everything was your fault. It means everything can be your choice. There is grace in that. No longer tangled in resentment, no longer waiting for closure, just present, willing, clear. The law does not bend to apology, it bends to alignment. You align by declaring, I now accept myself as the cause of new experiences. And from that point forward, nothing is the same. Because when you live as cause, you no longer fear delay. You understand that timing is just the law synchronizing around your latest assumption. And when people misunderstand you, you do not shrink. You recognize that their lens is shaped by their own causation, and yours doesn't need to match. This is spiritual maturity, owning the inner without controlling the outer, creating without forcing, receiving without pleading, and yes, there will be days where you forget, where the old script plays louder than your truth. That's all right. Return. Cause doesn't require perfection, just recognition. Every time you return to the throne of consciousness and say, this too I can transform, you reclaim a little more light. And eventually, the world catches up, because it must. It always follows the seed. So ask yourself, what have I been seeding? And more importantly, what am I willing to plant now, knowing the law will honor it? Not someday, not when you're high vibe. Now, because the law of cause and effect is not waiting on your worth. It's responding to your willingness. Let that land. And know this. The moment you remember who you are as cause, the effects begin to move. There's a point in every journey where something clicks, where it becomes painfully obvious that what's missing isn't opportunity, effort, or even time. It's clarity. Clarity about the real currency of life, thought. Not the scattered flickers of reaction that dart across your mind when life feels chaotic, but the deep, steady impressions that form your unseen foundation. Those are the ones that build worlds. Most people try to fix their lives by rearranging outer events. They chase solutions, manipulate circumstances, hustle harder. But until thought is transformed, form merely reshapes its surface. The substance stays the same. It's like pouring water into differently shaped bottles, still the same water. Until the source is purified, the form is irrelevant. There was a time you believed action alone could fix everything. Work more, try harder, push through. And yet, despite your efforts, fulfillment stayed out of reach. Why? Because action without aligned thought is noise, empty motion. You're not here to spin. You're here to create, with precision, with purpose, with consciousness. This is where the law of vibration becomes more than concept. It becomes compass. Your dominant thought holds a vibration, a frequency. That frequency organizes your world, not by magic, not by superstition, by law. So if you want different outcomes, you don't need different luck. You need different thought. Thought is not invisible. It's formative. It's the substance behind the scene, the scaffolding of every manifested result. And here's the shift. Money is not the currency. Recognition is not the currency. Even time is not the currency. Thought is. Focused thought, deliberate, aligned, rooted in conviction, not confusion. Charles Haanel called this constructive thinking, the kind that does not wander, does not beg, and does not contradict itself every 5 minutes. Constructive thought knows where it's going. It has a spine. And when your thought develops structure, so does your world. Consider this. Every building began as a blueprint. But even before that blueprint was drawn, it was imagined, held, rehearsed. You don't get walls until you get lines. You don't get reality until you get vision. The mind is the original architect, and you're not just a visitor to that mind. You are it, in motion. So when lack appears, stop asking what went wrong in the world. Start asking, what have I been constructing in thought that allowed this to take shape? It's a sobering question, but it's the one that frees you, Because if thought built it, thought can revise it. And that revision doesn't require penance, it requires presence. To sit still long enough to hear your dominant beliefs echoing back in your results, and then, without shame, choose a better frequency. This is not mental gymnastics, it's spiritual precision. You're not here to think positively for 5 minutes and panic for the next hour. You're here to inhabit thought as creative substance, to mold it gently, steadily, until it matches the life you know is yours to live. That life doesn't begin with chance. It begins with clarity. And clarity begins by deciding what thought will now become non-negotiable. You may have accepted certain ideas as normal. I'm always behind. Things never quite work out. I have to sacrifice to get ahead. But those thoughts are not facts. They're choices, unexamined, repeated, memorized, until now. Now you're the one watching your mental ledger like it matters, because it does. Every unchecked assumption is a future condition. Every repeated inner dialogue is a blueprint. So ask yourself, not with pressure, but with quiet honesty, what am I funding with my thought today? Are you financing fear with your focus? Or are you investing in clarity, in vision, in calm? Because every thought is a transaction. You are either purchasing more of the same or buying into a higher pattern. And here's what most forget. You don't need external evidence to change your mind. Evidence follows thought, not the other way around. Waiting for life to prove your new belief is backwards. That's like planting a seed and standing over the soil, asking why there's no tree. The law doesn't answer to impatience. It answers to consistency. So hold your thought steady. Let it deepen. Let it burn away the old confusion, not through violence, but through presence. Let it sit long enough that it becomes a pattern, then a vibration, then form. And when doubt creeps in, don't fight it. Just remember, doubt is not a sign that your new thought isn't working. It's a sign that the old ones are dissolving. You're not losing clarity. You're shedding noise. So let it go. Hold your new blueprint with reverence. Let every silent yes reshape the internal walls. The world will catch up, because it must. Thought is the first currency, and you're spending it now. Spend wisely. Desire is not the problem. Misalignment is. You've been taught to question your wants, to tone them down, to spiritualize them into vague notions of detachment. But let's be honest, denying desire doesn't make you enlightened, it makes you conflicted. Desire is the spark of God moving through you with purpose. It is life-seeking fuller expression through your unique channel. But when that desire is filtered through fear, shame, or guilt, it distorts. It twists into neediness, grasps at outcomes, and burns out before it ever builds anything lasting. The desire itself was never the issue, it's the frequency beneath it. When a want is rooted in scarcity, it collapses under its own weight. But when it flows from harmony with spiritual law, it becomes a calling, precise, magnetic, sustainable. That's what alignment is, not moral superiority, not hyper-positivity. Alignment is coherence between your inner state and the principles that govern all creation. The law of correspondence whispers this truth. Your outer reality reflects the harmony or dissonance within. So if you've been wanting deeply but receiving sparsely, maybe it's not that the desire is too big. Maybe it's that the channel is noisy. Noise in the form of contradictory thought, competing beliefs, half-hearted affirmations laced with doubt. That's the gap, not fate, not karma, just misalignment. There was likely a time when you asked boldly for something and then immediately retracted it in thought. Maybe it sounded like, I want to thrive, but I don't want to be greedy. Or, I deserve better, but maybe now's not the right time. And in that split second, you short-circuited the flow. The universe didn't say no, it said, I'll match your vibration. If your energy was mixed, so was the result. Wanting alone doesn't move mountains, but clear, lawful desire, fused with spiritual confidence, does. This is what Haanel meant when he taught that thought must be directed toward definite ends and held with unwavering faith, not rigidly, not forcefully, but cleanly. So how do you align? Start by noticing the difference between hunger and calling. One arises from lack, the other from truth. Hunger says, if I get this, I'll feel safe. Calling says, I am this. It's time to express it. You feel the difference. One contracts, one expands. Begin listening for that expansion. When a desire stirs your peace, ask it what it's trying to fix. But when it amplifies your peace, that's alignment. And once that alignment is felt, anchor it. Don't just daydream. Structure your thought. Feed the desire by meditating on it, not with anxious repetition, but with quiet ownership. Let it settle into your bones until it feels less like wishful thinking and more like memory. That's when the law responds, not when you plead, but when you know. Knowing doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives as stillness, a holy calm that whispers, of course it's mine. And when you walk in that tone, life mirrors it. The opportunities arrive, not because you chase them, but because they had no choice. The vibration called them forth. It's not manipulation, it's matching. When you hold a desire with clarity and peace, without inner tug of war, you don't just hope for it, you embody it. And once it's embodied, it becomes inevitable. So if you've been wanting and waiting, pause. Go within. Ask, is this want coming from fear or flow? Then choose again. Refine. Align. This is spiritual refinement, not obsession, not resistance, but precision. Remember, the law does not respond to what you want. It responds to who you are while wanting it. So become the version of yourself who knows, not just intellectually, but vibrationally. The version who no longer asks, will it happen? Because she's already moved on to preparing space for it. The version who doesn't explain or justify her vision because it's no longer up for debate. You don't manifest by convincing the universe. You manifest by becoming non-resistant to what's already true. And when your desire aligns with that truth, everything moves. There was a time you believed belief was passive, something to possess quietly, a backdrop to effort, a soft hum behind the scenes while the real work played out on the surface. But that illusion faded when you noticed how powerfully your life began to imitate what you believed about it. Belief isn't passive, it's a builder, silent but relentless. It's the mold your experiences pour into, the blueprint your mind hands over to the law saying, this. Build this. No matter what you affirm aloud, the deeper belief always prevails. It's not what you say that shapes your world. It's what you're convinced of when you're not trying. This is where so many get frustrated. They work on their mindset, repeat their affirmations, visualize with effort. But all the while, the core belief underneath whispers a quiet contradiction. It's probably not going to last. This might work for others, but not me. I still have more to fix before I deserve it. And the law, ever obedient, matches that whisper, not the performance on top. There's nothing wrong with affirmation, but if your belief doesn't match it, the energy splits. And when energy splits, manifestation stalls. This isn't punishment, it's precision. The law responds to the dominant vibration, not the loudest thought, but the deepest one. That's why belief structures your supply. You can't hold a belief in limitation and expect abundance to override it. It won't. Not because you're unworthy, but because the law can't violate itself. What's held consistently in mind takes form. So when something is missing in your life, don't panic. Don't spiral into lack. Trace it back. Ask, what belief would allow this to persist? Not to shame yourself, but to uncover the pattern. You might find beliefs you inherited, ones you never examined. Beliefs about effort, about struggle, about your worth. They feel old, but they still operate until you interrupt them, not by shouting them down, but by choosing something truer. And here's the shift. Belief isn't something you force. It's something you choose. then practice, then stabilize. The same way you once believed in your limitations, by repetition, by association, by emotion, you can now believe in your expansion. You don't have to fake it. Begin small. Find one area of life where the evidence contradicts the old belief, where life has supported you, even once. Anchor there. Then expand that evidence into a new assumption, one you can live with. Not one you recite with clenched fists, but one that brings ease when you say it. Things work out for me in unexpected ways. My value is recognized without performance. What I've outgrown will dissolve, and what I'm ready for will appear. These aren't mantras, they're scaffolding, new architecture. When belief becomes stable, supply becomes predictable, not in timing but in tone. You begin to notice how reality moves around your inner certainty, not to test you, but to reflect you. The law of belief, sometimes called the law of assumption, is impersonal. It doesn't weigh right or wrong. It delivers based on acceptance. Whatever you deeply accept as true will organize itself into your experience. So why not choose acceptance that uplifts, not blind hope? Conscious permission. Let your beliefs be chosen, not recycled. Not what your parents believed, not what your old wounds still echo, but what your highest clarity now affirms. Belief isn't stubbornness, it's trust in structure. A belief held long enough becomes a filter through which every opportunity, conversation, and moment is interpreted. And if your belief is, I am always overlooked, then no matter how loudly the world cheers, your filter won't hear it. But if your belief is, I am naturally supported, then even the smallest gesture of kindness feels like alignment. You see what you believe, you receive what you believe, you sustain what you believe. So today, gently ask yourself, what belief is shaping my supply chain right now? If you find a limiting one, don't resist it, replace it, calmly, repeatedly. And remember, belief doesn't require proof to begin. It creates the proof. Start there. It's easy to say you believe in abundance until life stretches you. When bills stack, when uncertainty lingers, when something you've counted on disappears overnight. That's the pressure point where most assumptions reveal themselves. Not the ones you've consciously chosen, but the ones still hiding in the background. The ones formed in childhood, reinforced by struggle, masked with polite optimism. In those moments, it's not positivity that carries you. It's certainty. Not loud certainty, quiet, rooted, non-reactive. The kind that doesn't flinch when the evidence doesn't match. The kind that holds its tone, not out of denial, but because it knows the law doesn't operate on panic, it responds to inner coherence. This is where the law of faith begins to unfold its deeper wisdom. Faith isn't belief in outcomes, it's resonance with principle. It's not about whether things go your way. It's about whether your inner state remains in harmony with the truth, even when circumstances wobble. Prosperity doesn't come to those who need it most. It flows through those whose vibration becomes non-resistant to its presence. That distinction matters. Need is a closed circuit. It focuses on what's absent and amplifies it. Certainty is open. It holds space for receiving, not because everything looks perfect, but because something within knows the law never sleeps. You may have noticed this. The more urgently you try to manifest something, the more it slips through your hands. Not because you're wrong to want it, but because the energy underneath is broadcasting contradiction. The law listens to your frequency, not your words. So what does it mean to live in inner certainty? It means your peace is not a negotiation. Your expectancy is not based on performance. Your vision is not up for constant editing every time the outer world throws a curveball. It's not about being rigid. It's about becoming grounded. There's a difference. Rigidity resists flow. Grounding creates it. Grounding means, I don't chase evidence, I create it. Even when things look unclear, you hold your pattern, not stubbornly, lovingly. That's the spiritual muscle. Consistency of inner tone when results haven't yet arrived. because they always arrive. Not always in your timing, but always in the rhythm of your resonance. Here's the trap. When something appears delayed, the ego assumes the law isn't working. But the law always works. What changes is your channel. If you tune to doubt, the signal distorts. If you return to faith, not as emotion, but as frequency, clarity resumes. This is why inner certainty is so powerful. It becomes the stabilizer of manifestation. Without it, you're at the mercy of appearances. With it, you influence appearances. Think of a thermostat, not a thermometer. A thermometer reacts, a thermostat sets. Inner certainty is that setting. And the beautiful part? It doesn't require circumstances to approve it. You can set your internal state like a spiritual thermostat, holding a tone of wealth, peace, sufficiency, regardless of what's showing up. Eventually, life rises to meet that setting. Not all at once, but steadily, faithfully. The law of assumption pairs with this certainty. Assumption doesn't mean pretending, it means choosing to live from the vibration of fulfillment before it manifests, because you know that's how it manifests. It's not mental trickery, it's spiritual causation. So the next time life appears to wobble, pause. Don't rush to fix. Don't rush to control. Return. Ask yourself, what part of me still believes that panic is more productive than presence? And from that awareness, choose again. Inner certainty isn't loud. It doesn't demand applause. It doesn't broadcast its faith. It just holds. And the law, like a faithful servant, begins rearranging the outer world to match it. That's not magic. That's precision. That's alignment. And alignment is what turns desire into demonstration, not someday, but soon enough. Because once you become a match, delay becomes irrelevant. You're no longer waiting. You're living it now. And the world, governed by law, must respond. It always does. There's a moment, subtle but unmistakable, when you speak a thing, and something in the air shifts. It's not just the sound, it's the authority behind it, the alignment beneath it. It happens when your word no longer comes from hope, but from knowing. Words shape more than sentences. They set spiritual structures into motion. When spoken from alignment, they do not beg, they build. Charles Haanel understood this deeply. To him, the spoken word wasn't idle sound, it was command. Not in the way of control, but of spiritual authorship. Your word is your decree. Whether whispered, thought, or declared aloud, it signals to the law what blueprint to unfold. So many speak carelessly, unaware they are giving form to the formless with every phrase. Nothing ever works out. I'm always broke. I can't seem to catch a break. These aren't complaints, they're construction. And the law does not discriminate. It fulfills the word held in emotional resonance. This is why careless speech is expensive, not in money, but in misalignment. It's not about being perfectly positive. That's performance. It's about being deliberately creative. A moment comes when you catch yourself mid-sentence, not out of guilt, but from recognition. You pause. You pivot. You choose a phrase that matches your desired identity, not your current mood. And that's the shift. The tongue stops being a thermometer and becomes a thermostat. It stops reporting. It starts creating. There's immense power in speaking truth before it's seen, especially when the outer world hasn't caught up yet. This isn't delusion. It's causation. You don't affirm to convince the universe. You affirm to align yourself. Because your word sets your tone, and tone shapes timeline. There's a difference between saying, I will be supported, and declaring, I am already in the rhythm of support. The former waits, the latter activates. When your word stops being a reaction to conditions and becomes a rhythm of consciousness, things shift fast. Because now you're not just hoping, you're anchoring. Each time you speak with clarity, the law listens without hesitation. And if the result doesn't appear right away, that doesn't mean it didn't work. It means it's still unfolding. Creation begins in the invisible. You spoke the command. Now walk in the tone. Let your word become your atmosphere. If your atmosphere has been heavy, distracted, frantic, it may not be your life that needs changing. It may just be your vocabulary. Language is not just descriptive, it's directive. Your words declare who you think you are, what you think is possible, and what you believe the universe is capable of delivering. So choose phrases that support, not scramble, your signal. Try this. Pay attention for 1 hour. Observe how often your words trail into limitation. Catch the drift. Reverse it, not with fake cheer, but with accurate truth. Instead of, "I'm trying to get by," say, "I'm learning how to thrive, one aligned choice at a time." Instead of, "This always happens to me," say, "This pattern is surfacing so I can finally dissolve it." No drama, just redirection. Every word spoken from that place of awareness creates a shift, maybe small, maybe immediate, but cumulative. You don't need to roar. Whispered truth spoken from conviction can crack open the next chapter of your life. And when you speak aligned words often enough, they stop feeling like effort. They become default. From there, your reality starts rearranging, not because you manipulated it, but because you gave it new instructions. No more vague requests. No more sending mixed messages to the field. From this point forward, let your word be clear. Let it carry conviction, not desperation. Let it speak from identity, not insecurity. Because when you speak as someone who remembers their power, the universe doesn't hesitate. It echoes. Picture a garden where you tend only the soil and expect fruit overnight. You water, you wait, but your focus remains fixated on what hasn't appeared. Eventually you start questioning the seed. Not because it failed, but because your attention never left the absence long enough to nurture the becoming. This is the trap of contradiction, hoping for abundance while mentally rehearsing lack. You can't hold images of scarcity and expect life to reflect fullness. The law doesn't translate confusion into clarity. It reflects what's most consistently felt. That's why mental equivalents are everything. What you hold in consciousness, emotionally, habitually, unshakably, becomes your experience, not because you're being tested, but because consciousness is creative. Haanel emphasized this with unrelenting clarity. To change the condition, you must first change the mental image behind it, not the fantasy, the structure. There's a difference between wishful thinking and a true mental equivalent. One floats, the other forms. The mental equivalent isn't just an idea, it's the emotional architecture of what you're ready to receive. It holds the shape of your future, already accepted as real in your vibration. And when it's strong enough, the outer world adjusts to match it. It can't not. So if something continues to feel blocked, stalled, slow, it's not punishment. It's precision. It means the image you're holding doesn't yet match the outcome you're asking for. Maybe you want wealth, but still think like someone stuck in survival. Or you seek love, but hold a mental equivalent of abandonment. It's not your fault, but it is your invitation. You're not here to force change from the outside. You're here to sculpt new internal templates. The law of correspondence responds not to what you think once, but what you live in thought. Which means you don't need more willpower. You need deeper agreement. Start where the friction is. Trace the emotion. Ask what belief it points to. And from there, begin reshaping, not with urgency, but with intention. Choose new images that don't just excite you, but soothe you. Peace is the signature of a true mental equivalent. If your imagined future makes you anxious, you're not aligned with it yet. That doesn't mean it's not yours. It means it's asking for integration. Let the new image settle in stages. Visit it daily, not to escape the present, but to rewire it. And the more you return to that vision with calm expectancy, the more substance gathers around it. Life begins organizing itself around your steady signal. You won't need to announce it. People will feel it. Circumstances will shift to accommodate it. And that's when you'll realize It was never about effort. It was about inner structure. A person who holds wealth consciousness doesn't need to manifest money with desperation. They think, feel, and respond from sufficiency, and the world echoes that pattern. Mental equivalents create magnetic fields, not of fantasy but of pattern, so check yours. What's the emotional tone you carry when no one's watching? What's the image you revisit most often, not just in meditation, but in casual thought? That's the code you're sending, and it can be rewritten, gently, consistently, with care. You don't need to see results to affirm the new pattern. You need to feel it long enough that results become inevitable. This is not about faking. It's about becoming someone who walks with the inner certainty of a fulfilled life long before it arrives, because it's already here in blueprint form. All that's left is alignment. It started quietly, the way most transformations do, not with fireworks but with a subtle realization. What you see isn't all there is. What's unfolding isn't always visible. That shift, small but unshakable, reminds you just because something hasn't arrived in form doesn't mean it's not already on its way. There was a moment, perhaps in stillness or in longing, when it hit you. The desire you've been carrying has already been received, not by the world, but by the deeper intelligence that governs it. The blueprint has been accepted. The form simply hasn't caught up. But how could it? Form is always the final stage. Substance builds in the unseen first, assembling itself around your focus, your consistency, your inner tone. When you begin to grasp this, your need to rush dissolves. Urgency fades. A quiet steadiness takes its place, not passive, but deeply aware. You stop questioning the delay and start mastering the vibration you've been sending. Charles Haanel taught this elegantly. Thought is the cause, form the consequence. And that means reality is always lagging behind consciousness, always. So if the thing you've claimed hasn't shown up yet, don't ask what's wrong. Ask what's still refining. Ask which part of you hasn't yet fully accepted the arrival. Most people misinterpret the gap. They call it failure. They retreat. But the gap isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's the space where your assumptions settle, solidify, and become instructions to the universe. Something changes the moment you stop measuring life by timelines and start measuring it by alignment. You're no longer staring at the door. You're becoming the one who lives beyond it, before it opens. From that place, your focus sharpens. You no longer entertain every passing doubt. You don't rehearse the worst-case scenarios just because your mind is bored. Instead, you tend the vibration like sacred ground. You recognize that even now, pieces are moving. Emails are being written. Decisions are being made. Opportunities are assembling, not in your line of sight, but in response to the frequency you've held. And no, you don't get a tracking number. You get a choice, to trust the pattern or to break it. Faith is no longer theory. It's a lived posture. It's how you walk, how you speak, how you make decisions while the visible hasn't yet shifted. The law of perpetual transmutation is in motion, whether you feel it or not. Energy is moving into form continuously. That's not philosophy. It's mechanics. This law doesn't require you to understand every step. It asks that you stop interrupting it with doubt. A belief, when held with steadiness, becomes a magnet. And the moment you let go of needing to see it to believe it, you make space for it to appear, that's when things happen, suddenly, but not surprisingly. Because you already saw them, internally, repeatedly. You lived with the outcome in your mind until it wasn't a future event anymore. It became an identity. You stopped chasing and started preparing. Your actions shifted. Your posture adjusted. You no longer waited for confirmation. You became the confirmation. And life responded. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped contradicting it. In that space, the invisible stops feeling distant. It starts feeling familiar. And when it does, you realize that most of the waiting was never about time. It was about readiness. Now, you're no longer waiting. You're participating, not just in hope, but in creation. There was a day, not marked on any calendar, when you stopped asking life to prove itself and began recognizing your own creative authority, not because you felt particularly powerful, but because something clicked. The exhausting cycle of effort, force, and second-guessing no longer felt like home. That moment changed everything. It didn't erase fear, but it rewired your posture. You began approaching prosperity not as something to be acquired, but expressed. And that shift made all the difference. True prosperity isn't a delivery, it's a channeling. It doesn't arrive from outside and bless the chosen. It moves through the open, through the one who has aligned their inner world with the rhythm of sufficiency. You don't get abundance. You allow it to be revealed through you. This isn't semantics, it's the key. The mindset of getting keeps you chasing. It suggests distance, separation, withholding. But when you realize you are the channel, not the recipient, not the seeker, but the pathway, scarcity loses its grip. From that realization, old habits begin to dissolve. You stop waiting for permission to feel empowered. You stop performing for crumbs of validation. The exhausting dance of proving, pleasing, and pleasing again, it fades. Because now you remember, the supply you once begged for is already flowing, just waiting for a clear passage. The law of circulation confirms this. All things flow through channels. Blockage doesn't occur at the source. It occurs where the current is resisted. So if something's felt stuck, it doesn't mean the supply dried up. It means the passage was cluttered with doubt, with fear, with unworthiness. And the clearing doesn't take years. It takes a choice. One choice, made fully, lived daily, to stop seeing yourself as a container and start seeing yourself as a conduit. Containers hold. Conduits flow. One fears running out, the other trusts renewal. Which one have you been living as? You may have noticed that when you grasp too tightly, whether with money, time, or energy, life seems to contract. But when you loosen the grip, when you move with generosity and calm authority, things begin to unfold. Not magically, but lawfully. You've become the channel again, and channels don't beg. They align. They trust the current because they've stopped blocking it. That trust shows up in your choices. You no longer say yes to what shrinks you. You don't rush to fix what isn't broken. You stop chasing after scarcity in disguise. Your posture speaks before you do, and people feel it. Because when someone lives as the channel of power, they become unmistakable, not loud, not flashy, but deeply magnetic. They're the ones who walk into a room and shift the atmosphere, not with ego, but with presence. You've met them, and perhaps you're starting to become one. There's a steadiness to this path. It doesn't need outer control. It focuses on inner clarity. If something feels off, the question isn't, what's wrong with them? It becomes, where have I pinched off the flow? That question changes everything. It reclaims agency. Because now you're not at the mercy of markets, moods, or moments. You've come back to the source and remembered it runs through you. There's no special ritual, no secret phrase, just consistent alignment. Your task is not to power the supply. It's to stay clear enough to carry it. And when you do, the results speak for themselves. You won't have to push for attention. Prosperity will recognize its own frequency and gather where it's welcome. That's the elegance of spiritual law. It moves where it's allowed, not where it's demanded. So let today be the moment you stop trying to attract and start learning to transmit. You are the channel, not someday, not when I finally figure it out. Now let that truth land, let it settle. And from that place, move. Gratitude doesn't begin when things go right. It begins when you recognize that things are already flowing, even if not in the way your mind expected. There's a difference between saying thank you out of habit and being rooted in a state of thankfulness that rewires your entire frequency. One is politeness, the other is power. Gratitude isn't a transaction, it's a transformer, not because it makes you a good person, but because it tunes your consciousness to receive. Imagine it like this. The moment you enter the vibration of appreciation, you tune your spiritual dial to the frequency of more. Not more in the greedy sense, but in the natural sense. What you affirm with presence, you extend. What you celebrate, you circulate. Gratitude completes the circuit. That's what Charles Haanel understood so clearly. When you give thanks, real thanks, you're not just reacting to something. You're claiming it, confirming it, stabilizing it in consciousness so it has permission to stay. Think of it this way. Without gratitude, blessings pass through like strangers. With gratitude, they become residents, anchored, multiplied. Not because you earned them, but because your inner atmosphere became a place where they're recognized and welcomed. You don't have to force gratitude. You return to it. You remember the breath you didn't ask for, but received. The way your body repairs itself while you sleep. The conversation that found you when you needed it most. The exact timing of something you couldn't have orchestrated, but somehow lived through. When you see life this way, even challenge becomes sacred. Not in a performative, good vibes only kind of way, but in a grounded, honest way. You stop labeling moments as good or bad and start asking, what is this offering me? Gratitude reframes everything. A delay becomes a refinement. A closed door becomes redirection. An ending becomes sacred space for something better prepared to begin. But the real gift? You stop living in reactivity and start living in rhythm. Gratitude is that rhythm. It softens the grasp. It silences the chase. It dissolves the part of you that always needs to figure it out. Because now, you're not just reacting to life, you're co-creating with it. From that place, even the unseen becomes trustworthy. You no longer demand evidence before you feel blessed. You feel blessed, and then the evidence shows up. It's not superstition, it's law. The law of increase responds directly to appreciation. What you appreciate appreciates. Which means gratitude isn't just noble, it's strategic. Not the manipulative kind, the aligned kind. And it doesn't take long. One sincere pause can shift an entire day. It could be in the morning, when you open your eyes and realize nothing is owed, and yet everything is given. It could be in the middle of tension, when you stop and notice your own resilience showing up, unannounced, like it always does. Or it could come at the end of the day, when you reflect and realize that, even in the discomfort, you were guided. Gratitude makes you receptive, not to crumbs, but to clarity. From this posture, you receive differently. You no longer grab, you welcome. You no longer fear it leaving. You recognize that what is truly aligned cannot be lost. And when things do exit your life, you release them with reverence, not because it didn't matter, but because its purpose completed. That's the flow. That's how circulation works. Holding, releasing, receiving, appreciating. It's all part of the same current. So if life feels stuck, start the current again. Not by doing more, but by noticing more. And give thanks, not for appearance, but for alignment. It often begins subtly. You notice how scattered your thoughts feel, how easily attention slips from what truly matters into the hands of everything that doesn't. Notifications, unfinished conversations, vague worries, recycled fears. Before long, your focus feels hijacked. Not stolen, but surrendered, piece by piece, without you even realizing it. Then one morning, or maybe late at night, you stop. Not because you're angry, but because something inside has grown too weary to continue living on autopilot. You sit in that stillness, and something becomes clear. Your mind was never meant to run unattended. It's not a wild horse. It's a precision tool, a lens through which energy becomes form. That realization doesn't come with fireworks. It lands slowly, the way wisdom does, quiet but irreversible. In that moment, you reclaim your focus, not like a general commanding troops, more like an artist choosing where the light should fall on the canvas. You stop looking at attention as something passive. You begin to treat it as sacred. The law of concentration reveals this truth. What you consistently hold in mind becomes magnetized, not instantly, but inevitably. That means your attention is always planting, whether you realize it or not. You're either reinforcing what you love or repeating what you've outgrown. There's no neutral ground. So you begin to refine, not with shame, but with care. You choose where to dwell, not for 5 seconds of daydreaming, but as a lived decision. It's no longer about controlling every thought. That would be exhausting. It's about returning to the dominant tone you want life to echo. A tone of calm conviction, of clarity without rigidity, of a mind trained not to resist distraction with force, but to outgrow it through devotion. There's something elegant about this kind of discipline. It doesn't parade itself. It doesn't shout. It moves quietly, like water carving stone. With each return to focus, something real begins to shift. Not outside, but in the atmosphere you live within. The outer world eventually catches up. But by then, you're no longer desperate for signs. You've already become the signal. Old patterns lose their grip, not because they disappeared overnight, but because you stopped feeding them. That's the power of attention reclaimed. You no longer chase a million tasks. You tend the few that matter, the ones aligned with your blueprint, your rhythm, your next chapter. From this place, even simple actions carry weight. You pour intention into what used to feel automatic. You pause before reacting. You speak with more precision. You rest without guilt. And when distraction tries to reclaim you, you don't spiral. You pause, you breathe, you return. Return to the thought that strengthens. Return to the vision that still excites you, even on quiet days. Return to the knowing that discipline isn't punishment, it's freedom, structured. The longer you hold your attention in alignment, the more your energy stops scattering and begins to concentrate. Into clarity, into momentum, into form. That's how reality reshapes. Not in a single moment of inspiration, but through steady remembrance. So the next time you feel pulled in every direction, pause. Step back from the swirl and choose again, not with urgency, but with reverence. Because what you focus on isn't just what you see, it's what you become. There's a kind of tension that comes from trying to force timing, an invisible tug-of-war between your desire and what feels like delay. You visualize, you affirm, you do everything right, and still nothing seems to move. That's when impatience creeps in, dressed as action. You start looking for shortcuts, signs, anything that might speed things up. But deep down, speed isn't the solution. Alignment is. Trying to push manifestation into form before it's fully ripened isn't just exhausting. It disrupts the very rhythm designed to support you. That rhythm is real. It's not your enemy. It's your ally. The law of divine timing doesn't operate by your clock. It operates by readiness, energetic, emotional, structural, and when something hasn't shown up, it doesn't always mean it's missing. It might mean you're still growing into the version of yourself that can hold it. You don't plant seeds and dig them up every few hours to check if they're growing. You trust the soil, you water it, you let light do its work. Creation unfolds the same way. There was likely a time you tried to micromanage the process. You read into every delay, questioned every pause. It felt like standing outside a locked door, rattling the handle, demanding it open. But nothing opens in response to desperation. Doors open when your presence matches what's behind them. Sometimes the delay is grace in disguise. Not punishment, not rejection, protection. Life was holding space for what you weren't yet able to carry without collapsing into old patterns. When you finally see that, frustration dissolves. You stop measuring time in minutes and start measuring it in maturity. This isn't about passivity, it's about precision. The moment you stop forcing, a deeper kind of power awakens. One that doesn't push, it draws. One that doesn't hustle, it allows. From that place, you stop needing to make it happen. You begin preparing space for what's already on the way, and preparation is never wasted. It sharpens you, it clears you, It strips away what once diluted your energy and invites you to live in coherence. The kind of coherence that makes you magnetic, not someday, but now. You begin acting as if, not pretending, but embodying. You make decisions from your future self's clarity, not your current self's anxiety. You bless the pause because it's no longer empty, it's fertile. And in that fertile stillness, you remember, it's not the speed of arrival that matters, but the strength of integration. If it comes too fast, it may pass through you before it can root. But when it comes in its right time and you are ready, not just hoping, you'll know, not because it looks perfect, but because it fits. It arrives not to complete you, but to match you. So let go of the countdown. Live the readiness. Choose peace in the pause. Trust the intelligence behind what hasn't happened yet. And remember, when the alignment is clean, manifestation doesn't require a fight. It shows up on time. There's a subtle distortion in the way prosperity is often framed, as if abundance were something you hoard, stack high, lock away. But true wealth was never meant to be kept. It was meant to move, not recklessly, not to impress, but with purpose. When prosperity becomes about possession, the channel narrows, flow constricts. The very thing you once invited with joy now begins to feel heavy, like something that must be defended. But when you see prosperity as expression, something shifts in you. No longer obsessed with keeping it, you begin asking, what is mine to circulate? And not just money, energy, ideas, time, presence. The law of circulation teaches that nothing in life remains static. What stagnates, spoils. What flows, multiplies. This law isn't cruel, it's regenerative. It keeps everything in motion, breath, blood, seasons, cycles. Prosperity is no different. A generous spirit doesn't mean careless giving. It means intentional movement of your resources, aligned with your values, fueled by trust. There was probably a season when giving felt like losing. Maybe you gave too much, too fast, without discernment. Maybe it was from a place of guilt or fear of being seen as selfish, and so you swung to the other extreme, tightened, withheld, waited. You recognize your own light in the opportunities that appear, in the people who resonate, in the abundance that finds its way to you without struggle. From here, you no longer need to chase alignment. You are alignment. You don't need to become worthy. You remember that you always were. And that memory becomes the mirror. You've come far, not just in words, but in understanding, in reclaiming what was always yours. Not a single truth spoken here is new to your soul. It's been echoing inside you for lifetimes, waiting for this moment of remembrance. Let the pace slow now. Let your nervous system exhale. This isn't the end of the journey. It's a recalibration, a return to essence. You are safe to receive now. Let that sentence sink in, not as encouragement, but as instruction. You are safe to receive now. No more waiting, no more fixing, no more bargaining with your worth. What you've claimed in thought, spoken in clarity and aligned with in vibration, is already organizing itself in form. Let this wisdom settle in your bones. Feel the weight of needing to prove, to strive, to validate. Drift off your shoulders. Let it go. Let it dissolve in the light of who you now remember yourself to be. Nothing more needs to be forced, only chosen. You don't need to chase miracles. You are the condition in which they occur. You don't need to beg for support. You are immersed in it. You don't need to earn love. You are made of it. So breathe deeply now. Inhale what's true. Exhale what's no longer yours to carry. From this stillness, walk forward, not in search of prosperity, but as its living embodiment.